May 27th meeting of the Gainesville City Commission Finance Committee. Looks like we are all in attendance, and thank you, Commissioner Book, for joining us this afternoon. First up, Madam Clerk.
Madam Chair, we have call to order.
All right, I've done that.
And then we have the adoption of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All right, a motion and a second. Any comments from the public regarding adoption of our agenda? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. That passes unanimously. Madam Clerk.
Mayor Chair, we on to approval of the minutes. The Finance Committee approves the minutes from the February 25th, 2026 meeting. The Finance Committee approves the minutes from that February 25th meeting.
I'd like to move approval of the minutes from the February 25th, 2026 meeting.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any public comment on our meeting minutes from February? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. It passes unanimously. Madam Clerk.
Mr. Chair, we're on to business discussion items. 2026-338 fiscal year 2026 Q2 City Investments Performance Report. The Finance Committee reviews and accepts the submitted fiscal year 2026 Q2 City Investment Performance Report and refer the report to the City Commission.
All right. Good afternoon, Ms. Manager.
Good afternoon, committee members and commissioners. I'm William Johnston. I work in the finance department. I'm the investment manager for the city. This agenda item is presenting you the investment performance report for the city's assets at mid-year as of March 31st, 2026. We bring this report to you twice a year, and I'm going to focus on attachment A, which is a spreadsheet showing the summary of the various investment assets that the city owns. The summary is broken down into two sections. The top section is the city operating and surplus funds, which is basically the cash that the city holds at any given time. These investments are restricted to less risky fixed income type investments, such as money market funds and bonds and things of that nature. The second section is for the city's pension plans and trust funds. These are longer term investments and higher risk investments that include equities and real estate and other types of investments like that. As of March 31st, the city had $342 million approximately in the state's State Board of Administration's Prime Fund account. That's basically a money market account for governments, and it provides daily liquidity and also provides an annualized rate of return that tracks essentially the Fed funds rate, but is designed to provide a bit higher return than the Fed funds. Fiscal year to date, that fund has returned an annualized number of about 4%. These types of returns are quoted in annualized numbers like bonds and things of that nature, whereas the other pension plan and trust funds, we provide a year-to-date return, which is calculated differently. We continue to use SBA Prime Fund. We don't have any investments in a bond portfolio at the moment, and that's because we were anticipating a rise in yields. We've seen that actually play out over the last couple of months. If you buy a bond with a certain yield and rates go up, the market value of that bond goes down. That's the way the bond markets work. And although we really are designed to hold our bonds to maturity so that any unrealized market valuation loss is temporary, we still have to report that, in our accounting and on the books, and we prefer not to do that. In any case, you want to buy bonds at the peak yield if you can. We're not trying to be market timers, but given the events that we saw occurring in the first quarter of 2026, we thought it made sense to wait and buy bonds later in the year. So we'll probably start buying bonds again sometime in the next month or two. In the meantime, those assets are being held at the state SBA Prime Fund account, and they're earning 4%, which is a respectable yield. There's also a small amount of cash that's reflected in the report, a little over $6 million, that's held in our Truist bank accounts, and that's just what's used for daily cash needs for payroll, payables, things of that nature. And it earns a much lower rate of return of about 1% annualized. Moving down to the pension plans and trust funds, the city has about not quite $1.2 billion in its pension plans and trust funds. This includes the general employees pension plan, the police officers and firefighters pension plan, the retiree health insurance trust fund, and a small amount in the Evergreen Cemetery Trust Fund. All of these assets are managed externally. We oversee the investment managers for these funds, but there are external managers that make the actual direct investments. Through the March 31st, the second quarter of fiscal year, the returns were slightly negative. There was a lot of volatility in the most recent quarter due to what happened in the Middle East with oil prices and military conflict and things of that nature. So you'll see across the board the returns were primarily negative. This was a temporary situation, and you know, as you'll see at the end of the fiscal year, April actually, the plans were generally up between 8 and 9% in the month of April. So these returns are positive through the end of April, but since we're reporting on March, you're not going to see that here. And you know, no one really likes volatility, but we're willing to accept it to get a higher, longer-term rate of return. We feel like with these investments, we can get annual rates of return of close to 10%, whereas with fixed income, you're lucky if you're getting 4 or 5%. And over the long term, that makes a big difference in the funding and in the required city contributions for the pension plans. In total, the city had over $1.5 billion in assets and investments at the end of March 31st, with a slightly negative return if you compare both operating fund and trust fund money. Any questions on any of this?
Commissioner?
Yeah.
Just a couple quick ones. Just looking at the pension plans and trust funds, it looks like the police and fire pension fared way better than the other funds. Is there just that big a difference in their
The police and fire
strategy?
pension plan is governed by a statutory board that's separate from the city commission, which is the board of trustees for the general employees pension plan. The strategic long-term investment allocation is slightly different between the two plans. The police and fire pension plan is slightly more conservative. It has some lower volatility, alternative credit type investments, as well as a higher level of real estate investment than the general pension. And so when you see down quarters or down years, that plan is typically going to outperform the general employees pension plan. However, if you look back across fiscal year 25, 24, 23, 22, 21, you will see that the general employees pension plan has outperformed that plan in every year except fiscal year 22. So I believe the strategic allocation to the general employees pension plan is a better long-term option, but I have less influence on the police and fire pension plan than I do on the general employees pension plan.
Very good. And I'm assuming similar answer on why it was particularly rough on the Evergreen Cemetery Trust Fund too. It's like it was down almost 6%. I've been assuming it's just different strategy.
Again, that's a more concentrated investment in mutual funds, equity mutual funds. And yes, it's down for the quarter, but it's also at the end of April, the best performing fund. And if you look at, again, prior fiscal years, it's outperformed every one of our other funds.
All right, very good. Thank you.
All right. Anything else? No? All right, thank you, Mr. Johnston. Do I have a motion to accept this report and refer to the commission?
Moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any comments from the public? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Johnston. Madam Clerk.
Chair, we are on to 2026-354. Third budget amendment to the fiscal year 2026 general government financial and operating budget. Review the proposed budget amendment resolution and, if acceptable, recommend that the city commission adopt and propose resolutions.
All right.
Good afternoon. For the record, Allison Teslia, the Director for the Office of Management and Budget. Today I'll be providing an overview of the recommendations provided by staff for the third amendment for the fiscal year 2026 financial and operating plan. The line item details are provided in attachment A for every single amendment. First, we'll start with the authorized position levels. This amendment is requesting an additional 3 FTEs. The first of which is for the city manager's office. Staff's requesting a new executive assistant position for the Government Affairs and Community Relations Division. In fiscal year 2026, that position would be funded by the reallocation of vacancy savings. And then if it was approved in fiscal year 2027, the expenses would be offset by eliminating temporary services funding. Next, we have for transportation and parking enforcement, they're requesting 2 new parking enforcement officer positions. Those positions are expected to have a July 26 start date and would be funded by parking citation revenues. In fiscal year 2027, if approved, these positions would be funded from parking citation revenues that are expected to be a little higher because we have more enforcement. Other position modifications that we have that net no FTE change. We have the city auditor's office request to unfreeze a senior internal auditor and freeze the staff auditor position for a promotion, which was approved by the city commission back in April. For the Office of Equity and Inclusion, we have the request to unfreeze the compliance manager position, which was approved by the city commission in February. For the police department, we have a request to unfreeze the teleserve operator position and convert it to a crime analyst position. This position would be funded by vacancy savings. In addition, they are also requesting to unfreeze a staff specialist position, which would be funded by the reallocation of temporary part-time budget. And then finally, we have in transportation, the request to unfreeze a paratransit operator position for the ADA paratransit program, which would be funded by a reallocation of existing budget. If all of these requests are approved, it would increase the total fiscal year 2026 authorized position level from 1,492.75 to 1,495.75 FTEs for all funds.
Just a moment, Director Leslie. Commissioner Book.
Yeah, thank you, Director, and thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a little more information about the 2 positions in transportation-related parking, how we anticipate they'll be used, and what's the total offset in costs with that against the parking revenue.
Jesus Gomez with the Transportation Department. Yes, that was actually a request that we get from businesses, downtown businesses, to have more enforcement on parking enforcement on the downtown area. And those 2 positions will be generated about $170,000 in revenue, and the cost of those positions is about $50,000.
So that's revenue positive as well as a request from basically our downtown community.
Yes.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Jesus.
Okay. Any other questions on the FTEs?
I think so.
Sure.
Commissioner Eastman?
I could ask the question about the FTEs now. So that is 3 FTEs total that are
Correct.
new FTEs. But then the other ones, we also have, we have this kind of funny, we have frozen positions, which were not eliminated, but they were frozen, which
Correct.
is kind of sitting in a limbo in a funny way. and that includes the city auditor, equity and inclusion, and then but if I remember right, the city auditor unfroze and then froze an FTE. So it's kind of taking one out of freezing, putting another one in there. So the total FTEs that they have available to them is roughly equal. And then Office of Equity and Inclusion, yeah, we did unfreeze. We fully unfroze a compliance manager there, and that was voted on by the commission. The police are unfreezing 2 positions.
Correct.
And then yeah, transportation is unfreezing a position, but those are, let's call frozen positions sort of, pseudo eliminated. That basically looks like, I guess, 4 kind of FTEs going from that are in the frozen to the unfrozen. Is my math right on that?
Yes.
Okay, 4 unfrozen. And then a lot of these are taken care of by vacancy savings in the current fiscal year, but they will be, those savings don't necessarily fall over into the next year because they want to fill some of these positions. So transportation, for instance, it will be included in the budget. The police, I guess. I guess each one is slightly different in how
They're all slightly different. So the city auditor and the equity and inclusion, those are being funded by an allocation of fund balance. And then for police, there's going to be vacancy savings from the police planner position. Somebody had been in that position for quite some time. So that will be reverting to a lower salary when they go to hire that position. It's my understanding. Chief could totally speak to it better than me.
But in FY27,
Correct.
that they will still be hiring for that position.
For the police planner? No, not the police planner. But that's where the savings would come from.
Okay.
Because they're swapping it, essentially.
Okay. Chief Moya is walking up behind you.
Good afternoon, Commission. Nelson Moy, Police Chief. So what we had is an opportunity when our employee retired, the police planner salary, which she had been in office for, I believe, 17 years. Excuse me. It afforded us an opportunity to kind of rethink what we were going to do with that position. It is our desire to convert that position, in essence, into 2 positions that will be crime analysts, entry-level crime analysts, that will work in our real-time information center to give our staff, especially our patrol officers, information, investigative leads, real-time as things unfold, so they can respond to and solve crimes quicker. And this gives us that opportunity. And because if we have that level of salary, it gives me the opportunity to do some things with, and that's why we're going at it in this fashion. At the end of the day, I think I forgot what the numbers are, but it does give us the opportunity to bring in 2 entry-level folks by unfreezing the teleserve position, and that's what we're trying to do. Unfreeze that one, reclassify that one as a crime analyst, and then change the police planner to crime analyst also.
But this would mean an increase in budget going into FY27 to some extent, even though you're splitting a larger salary. I guess you're unfreezing one and then you're bringing one position down.
Yes, sir. And I think from that exchange alone, I think we're in the red about 6,000 that we would have to cover.
Right. So nothing significant.
No,
but
no,
something.
sir. No,
Yeah,
so
but
I think the
but
trade
there-
and
there
all
was
the
a-
salaries puts us like in a $6,000 deficit.
Okay.
Yes, sir. And the other one is a complete wash.
Okay. Right. Perfect. Right.
Good.
Thank you, Chief.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
I think those are all my, I think those are all my questions. A lot of my questions will be on FY27 because we're within the current fiscal year, of course, we have some of these increases. You're talking about 3 FTEs total and we're midway through the budget year. But, I'm thinking about, we're midway through the budget year and FY27 is coming up at us quick and our budget gap keeps growing. So I'm curious about, what this will mean, in upcoming years. So I appreciate all the answers. Thank you.
Of course.
My question's about the transportation position, just because where it fits in the future budget. I know that we brought on the service in-house, and then it's been pretty successful. Is this largely because it is successful and we're transporting more people, which we have an obligation to do because of our funding stream? And so just I know when we originally were talking about this, probably a full year ago, about bringing the ADA transit in, we were saying what potential savings are out there. But it sounds like just the volume has gone up. Has the volume washed out any potential savings? Because that was one of the arguments originally.
No, even by adding these positions, we still gonna be, have the savings that we projected.
Okay, so we are still saving in the end. Okay, thank you so much. All right, I think that's all I had on the FTEs. All right, Commissioner Eastman.
One more question related to the parking position. So, for that particular fund, the parking fund, when that money gets rolled over into the general fund at the end of the
It's all general fund. There's
Okay.
not a separate parking.
Okay, great. So this would be, because it's being talked about here, that there's an excess amount of revenue, so then that's being tucked into there. But really, this is an excess amount of revenues that would normally go toward, filling our budget gap potentially in the next year when this goes in. And so this truly is 2 FTEs being put into our general fund at this point. Okay, and then you asked the question, okay, but can you just remind what do we think the revenue impacts of that would be for the parking attendants?
The total, well.
Well,
for-
do we have some kind of numbers as to when someone is enforcing parking? Is that revenue positive, revenue negative, revenue neutral? How does that look?
Yeah, it's a revenue positive.
Okay.
About we estimated 80 to 100,000 more
Okay.
per park enforcement officer. So
Okay. Because this person's basically just going around ticketing, collecting revenues
Yeah.
at that point.
yeah,
Okay.
that's what we have the minimum. That's what we see some surplus on the revenue.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Jesus. All right, that's all my questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Oh, Commissioner Book.
Yeah, this is a pretty important area here, is the one that deals with our positions. It'll come before us in the full commission a week from tomorrow, said Mr. Manager. I would just say, something that we've used for our budgetary projections and stuff in the past has been take a look and let's see, what was our allocation 10 years ago and 9 years ago and stuff. And I think we already probably have that. That was put together by the Chief of Staff last year. But it will be helpful to look at our total positions because it'll show trends and how we've dealt with things over the years. Our position count right now, the total authorized position level, is lower than it was 3 years ago. But I'll be curious to see what that is. That'll be also helpful for the full commission. Just a comment. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Continue.
Good. Okay. All right, next we'll start with the amendments to the general fund. First, we have an allocation of excess fund balance for the Citizens Field and MLK Property Revitalization Project. We also have funding for the Technology Department office build-out, and then the Heartwood Forgivable Loan. In addition, an allocation of fund balance for the Parks Master Plan, the Office of Equity and Inclusion Compliance Manager position that was unfrozen, and then the City Auditor, Senior Internal Auditor promotion, and the allocation for consulting services that was requested. We also have a recognition of the parking citation revenue due to the stronger forecasted collections than we originally had budgeted, and then a recognition of park admission revenues in PRCA. So the allocation of expenditures related to those revenues, we have the $5 million transfer to the General Capital Projects Fund for the Citizens Field and MLK Property Revitalization Project. We have $2.265 million transferred to the General Fund Capital Projects Fund for the new Technology Department space build-out within the existing RTS fleet facility. We have the $250,000 transfer to the Miscellaneous Special Revenue Fund to support the PRCA master plan process. And then we have the allocation for parking operations, which includes funding for the passport contractual services for the citation management, the salaries and benefits for the 2 parking enforcement officers that were requested, and the related operating costs. We also have a $100,000 transfer to the General Capital Projects Fund, which is being reallocated from the Vision Zero projects to Public Works for the Northwest 45th Avenue Sidewalk project. We have funding to unfreeze the compliance manager position. We have an allocation of the funding for the Heartwood Soundstage forgivable loan, which was approved by the City Commission in April. We have the allocation of funding to promote the senior internal auditor and funding for external audit consulting services. That was approved in April by the City Commission. And then we have an allocation of funding for the Sweetwater Wetlands Park parking app fees, which are offset by the admission fees in parks.
Forgive me.
Yep.
The Parks and Rec, that's the exact, so the revenue is exactly the same what we pay. So is that at this point, for this chunk of it, it's completely revenue neutral?
Yes.
That we pay to Passport?
Correct.
So it's just paying for itself
Yes.
to have the service?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And that's it for the general fund. Do we have any questions for that, or you want me to keep going?
Keep going, it looks like.
Okay. All right, next up, we have the amendment for the special revenue funds. First, we have the Transportation Mobility Program Area Fund, where we're recognizing new Transportation Mobility Program Area Mobility funding received from developers and allocated to the designated zones. We have an allocation for the Southwest 47th Ave roadway extension in Zone C. We have an allocation from the TMPA Zone B to Zone C for the Northwest 45th Avenue sidewalk in order to complete the Northwest 45th Avenue sidewalk project from Black Forest Way to C.W. Norton Elementary School. And then we have an allocation for the Southwest 35th Place sidewalk in Zone C for planning, public outreach, and conceptual design for the Southwest 35th Place complete street improvements. Then in the miscellaneous special revenue funds, we are recognizing that interfund transfer from the general fund for the allocation to the PRCA master plan. And then for the police department, we have an allocation of expenditures for various law enforcement programs based on the revenues that they've received that are specific to those programs, such as the drug task force, cost sharing, and the law enforcement education funds. All right, next we have the tree mitigation fund. We're using an allocation of fund balance for the Bivens Arm Restoration project and the Alfred A. Ring Park Wildflower Garden project. All right, next we have the special revenue grants funds, which includes the appropriation of grant revenues and expenditures. We have about $10.2 million in new grant revenue that's being recognized as revenue received and then being allocated to their specific projects or programs. First, we have the $8.2 million for the Federal Transit Administration 5339B grant, which is going to be used for the RTS West Side land acquisition, design and construction costs, and bus stop improvements. We also have some Florida Department of Transportation local agency program funding grants. One is for the allocation of Northeast 3rd Avenue and Waldo Road intersection improvements, and then an allocation for the Northwest 45th Avenue sidewalk construction phase. We also have an FTA grant for the 5311 program, which is going to be allocated for 2 wheelchair accessible demand response vans for RTS. And then we also have funding for the fiscal year 2026 National Police Athletic League grant, which is being allocated to that specific program. And then we have an allocation back to fund balance for grant reconciliations and awards that have been closed out throughout the year. A detailed listing of all the active grant awards is included in attachment A in the back. All right, next up we have the amendment for the capital projects funds, which is an appropriation of revenues and expenses. First, in the general capital projects fund, we have that $7.365 million interfund transfer from the general fund, which is being allocated for the Citizens Field and MLK property revitalization project, the technology department office space build out, and then the Northwest 45th Avenue sidewalk project. And then within that fund, we have a reallocation of funding from the Transportation ADA curb ramp retrofits program to the Northwest 45th Avenue sidewalk project. And then a reallocation of funds from the Southwest Parking Garage sprinkler piping replacement project to the City Hall Fire Suppression System project. And then next we have the new Capital Improvement Revenue Bond 2026 Series Capital Projects Fund, which is a recognition of the Series 2026 Capital Improvement Revenue Bond proceeds, which was recently approved by the City Commission, and then an allocation of funding for the projects and debt-related expenditures. The major projects are the Southwest Public Safety Center, Fire Station 3, and the Fire Training Facility. Next, we have the Local Option Gas Tax Capital Projects Fund, which is an allocation of interest earnings and fund balance to pay the Alachua County share of the LOGT under the existing interlocal agreement. Then in the Wild Spaces Public Places Surtax Fund, there were several project closeouts for completed projects that had a little bit of funding left over, and those are being allocated back to the fund balance. Then in the Wild Spaces Public Places Joint Projects with the County 2017-2025 Fund, there's a transfer from the Wild Spaces Public Places half-cent infrastructure sales tax 2023 to 2032 fund to this fund, which is a correction to a fiscal year 2025 carry forward that was posted incorrectly because they're in separate funds. We got to transfer the funding back. And then in the Wild Spaces Public Places Infrastructure Surtax 2023 to 2032 fund, we also have an allocation of fund balance for various projects, including the Bivens Arms Nature Park Boardwalk Replacement, Green Tree Park, the Wild Spaces Public Places Crosswalk Projects, Tom Petty Park Improvements Phase 2, Wild Spaces Public Places Contingency Program account, and then the transfer that I mentioned for the joint county fund.
Director Tesla, can you
Sure.
remind us about the crosswalk projects? Because this is the 150,000 here, but the closeout earlier says crosswalk projects as well. So I'm just trying to, are these two different chunks of crosswalk projects?
Good afternoon, Brian Singleton, Chief Operating Officer. So we have two different funds for Wild Spaces Public Places, the 2017 iteration and the current iteration. Due to the fiscal constraints in the general fund, we are releasing as much funds in the original iteration from available project accounts so that we can ensure that PRC is funded for O&M as long as possible. So basically moving the funding for these access to parks projects from the old fund to the new fund.
Okay.
So projects that were recently completed were the crosswalk at the old Girl Scouts building, I forget the name of it, off of 8th Avenue, one at Coffrin on Northwest 8th Avenue. There was one on Southwest 43rd Street near Abbey Weinbach. So those are some of the projects that these crosswalks are providing access to parks for.
Okay, because there's two different funds. It is kind of a closing out over here. Those funds will be spent slightly differently, but then recommitting in the new tranche.
Correct.
To continued crosswalk projects in our parks.
Yes.
Or near our parks.
Correct.
Okay, I think I understand that. Thank you so much, Mr. Singleton.
Any other questions? It's way higher than how tall I am. All right. Next, we have the budget amendments for the proprietary funds. First, we have in the Stormwater Management Utility Fund, we have an allocation of funding for the Northwest 45th Avenue Sidewalk Project. And then we have a transfer to Fleet Management and Replacement Fund for an additional mower head that's been discovered as needing to be replaced. And that's going to be offset by a reduction in repairs and maintenance. And then in the Regional Transit System Fund, we're recognizing additional bus lease revenues based on our current actuals in the fiscal year, and they're being allocated to cover increased vehicle expenses for diesel fuel. Then in the internal services fund and the fleet management replacements fund, we're recognizing revenue for proceeds from the sale of fixed assets, the recognition of a donated vehicle, which is required by GASB 33. We have the transfer from Stormwater Management Utility Fund, and then an allocation of fund balance, which are being appropriated for the installation of a generator at the fleet facility, which will help support the entire facility in case there's power outages or storm-related events. And then it's also going towards fleet operations vehicle replacement. And then we also have the recognition of the donated vehicle per GASB 33, and then the additional mower head. So staff's recommending that the City Commission amend the fiscal year 2026 general government financial and operating plan budget as presented today. And we have staff here to answer any other questions you may have.
All right. Commissioner Eastman?
Thank you. I appreciate how much work goes into making sure all of these things get through there and that we're all getting this correctly into there. I am mostly focused on the impacts on the general fund, particularly as we go into the next fiscal year. I mean, we just our March 26 budget. I'm noticing we had a $7.5 million gap. By May 5th, that was an $8.28 million gap. Tomorrow, we're talking about $11.94 million gap, and so it's I want us to be nimble about how we, when we have the opportunity to pull certain levers in order to fix that budget gap, that we have that there. So going back to the FTEs, which of course are rolling over, and they're 50,000, 100,000 here or there, but they add up over time. What is the temporary services funding? You said that the executive assistant would be taken out of that. What is temporary services funding?
Mr. Chair, so we currently have a funded temporary service person in that office. We're paying them. They're Spherion employee, and so we're converting them from a Spherion employee to a city employee. But we had to add an FTE. So in this case, it's not the funding so much as adding an FTE.
Okay.
So we would eliminate that funding that we're currently paying to Spherion as we bring this person on full-time, or as a permanent employee.
Okay, and that because that was allocated to having those particular things done, eliminating that wouldn't change, I guess, anything in the next fiscal year. That would just
No, it would just be a conversion, right? It would be. I mean, I guess we would have less ability to be able to bring on part-time, but that position has been funded that way for a couple of years now. So we're just trying to make it permanent.
Okay, and then we've already spoken about the parking enforcement, and then the next thing is and I've talked about this before, but we have the excess fund balance. We have a number of things that are kind of putting. Let me pull up the full excess fund balance, but kind of in orders of magnitude, you have $5 million coming out for Citizens Field, $2.3 million coming out for the tech build out. I guess my question is how much do we have in excess fund balance after all of that is said and done?
So with the 8th and Waldo project, the technology build out, the Heartwood Soundstage, and the PRCA master plan, the excess would be about 1.9 million.
Okay. And
that's what would be remaining.
And what did we start the year
It was
with?
at 9.4.
Okay. So 9.4. So we've used we've used I guess the amount that's in here. This is about $7 million drawn down from excess fund balance. Roughly 9.4 or 1.9. But okay, so that, and then I'm cognizant of the fact that we're at a $12 million budget gap right now. And when we look back, I was looking back on 2023, we're at about a $14 million budget gap. If you guys remember that year, that's the year that we raised a full millage in taxes. We cut a bunch of positions. I guess I'm concerned at the current moment of us committing ourselves to anything when we have 4 months left in the next budget. We don't have roll growth. I think we're getting that. Do you know when we're getting our growth on the roll numbers back?
We should have them by June 1, if not a little bit earlier than that.
Yeah. I at that point, I think we'll know more, and I'm reluctant to sign my name to a budget amendment that adds, 3 full FTEs. That's 4 unfrozen FTEs. All of them sound reasonable enough, but looking sort of top to bottom as to what's going to have an impact on our next fiscal year budget, particularly, so I said that $5 million from Citizens Field, if that would come from Wild Spaces Public Places, from GCRA, if there's other areas where that would make sense, or if there's ways to rethink that, where that project is, but see where that funding comes from. I think that $5 million could really come in handy as we're trying to pull all of the levers for how we're going to balance our budget this upcoming fiscal year. And so I would feel more comfortable in more deferring, I guess I would say, on this, as opposed to saying that the Finance Committee signs off on it, but just saying, kick this to, when did you say this is going to come forward to the full City Commission?
June 4th.
June 4th. By June 4th, we'll know where we are with taxes. We'll have a much clearer picture of where we are with everything. And then staff can take a second look at it and sort of see at that point, okay, where are we coming forward with all of this, and see if that makes more sense to defer some of these. Like is that the executive assistant seems like it makes sense because it's bringing it in-house, but does it make sense to, would we save money by doing that a different way? Do the parking attendants make more sense to keep where they currently are? I would prefer to have a little bit more information before we approve this budget amendment, is where I'm coming from with it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Brooke?
Well, thank you, Mr. Yeah, so similarly, the area that I was looking at in the third budget amendment was in this area of the excess fund balance. I would think that that's the one where we have the most leverage to potentially not allocate $7.3 million to two big things. The technology is needed, though, so that one we really have no choice in moving forward. For us to separate and make sure that we have our infrastructure to do that for the next several years. I think that's the right use for excess fund balance. Some of the other areas, maybe not, and those almost total another $5.5 million. So it would be great for the Finance Committee to, at least for this particular area, probably say that one needs a little more scrutiny with a little more clarity by a week, even by this Friday potentially, but Friday or Monday. Then my second thing was, Mr. Manager, talk a little bit about how we determine to bring back frozen positions, because we have a policy in place that we voted on about a year or two ago where we put positions frozen and then kind of created a procedural process to determine what should come before the commission on frozen positions.
That is, Mr. Chair, that is largely the process we're in right now. So those positions were as we all know, the commission decided to freeze them as opposed to eliminate them, which means that the FTEs still exist, but the positions themselves are unfunded. And so in order to fund those, it has to come to the Finance Committee for a vote and recommendation, and then it has to be approved by the full commission. There was no policy or procedure set up in terms of determining sort of a need for when frozen positions come back. It's largely left to the operational areas to make that recommendation to the commission. And obviously, as we have frozen positions in the city manager's chain, as do the auditor and the EO director, and those things have come back through this process.
Okay. Also, I have some similar concerns about some of this out of fund balance. Makes a lot of sense because they are big capital projects, which we've talked a lot about. Nathan Waldo, the build out of technology department. This is something we made real commitment to, and so it makes a lot of sense when we start talking about funding into next year, because I know it sounds like we're going to rely on fund balance for next year's budget. So the addition of FTE, it does make me a little concerned. Some of these parking enforcement, we suspect a revenue in that will, kind of be a wash. Though ideally long-term, not that case, because people really learn where they can and can't park, and there's, a diminishing return. Ideally, I think, in my mind, there's a diminishing return. But definitely in the first year of enhanced enforcement. So I have similar concerns, Commissioner Easton, about knowing even just a little further down the line where we're at on the FTE portions, because some of that does bake in. Now, some of these are switches, so it's not necessarily adding, and some of them have a short-term where the revenue is coming, where the offset is, but not a long-term. And so part of this is making sure the city staff understands, or they're clear that this is what they want right now, with potentially a week or two from now, us talking about cutting positions in different departments. So part of that, I think, Mr. Manager, is that is this proposal cognizant of those things? Is this the highest and best use of funds, knowing that in a week or two, with the numbers we're talking about, one potential proposal will be reducing FTEs, asking all of your departments to go look.
So I would say I'm comfortable with the FTE proposal before you. I will say, as you all know, this is a bit of a moving process in terms of additional data that we're getting on, and what we've communicated with departments and why departments have been bringing back budgets that are largely flat is for the same reason that we don't want to be, either adding positions or having to cut. But likely that's where we were going to end up with this budget year, unless the skies open up and tax roll growth comes back higher than we project or what have you. So I think I hear the concern, about positions, that the FTEs. I will say, as you all have discussed, we'll have better information like very soon, and so and before the June 4th, when this budget amendment will come to commission. Well, one thing I wanted to mention on the excess fund balance, I do agree that the technology piece is important, because that we've committed to that. We need space for the department to exist. The discussion, I think, of the $5 million of excess fund balance to 8th and Waldo has been a discussion that you all have had as a full commission. And the only thing I would say to that is excess fund balance is not something that we should be continually needing to rely on to patch our budget. We should be making structural changes to our expense side or to a revenue side to balance without the need for these infusions of excess fund balance. So I think last year we put in, I want to say, about maybe $1.5 million, and we would have, as Ms. Teslia indicated, some leftover excess fund balance, even if the commission were to approve all of this, excess fund balance leverage. But I hear the concern and the desire to have sort of maximum flexibility for how we're going to tackle this year's budget, because it is a serious gap that we're going to have to address. And I can guarantee you we are going to get to a balanced budget at the end of the year, as we're statutorily required to do. But how painful that is, obviously sometimes the excess fund balance has been used to help kind of minimize some of the worst cuts potentially, but it doesn't address the structural issues that we're going to need to address this year.
Okay. I would like to open up any public comment now and then come back around for some sort of action. Is there any public comment on this, Madam Clerk?
Mr. Chair, there's no public comments.
Okay. Now, I have a question. Does this is going to be on June 4th, no matter whether there was a recommendation from this committee? Is that correct?
I believe that's the case. Yeah, I think it moves on, as you all are advisory, I think, to the city commission. So I think if one way or the other, I think it moves on to the 4th.
Okay.
Yeah, I think your recommendation is not necessarily approve or deny. It's just review it and send it on to the city commission. So, because ultimately they're the ones, and when you're sitting as the city commission, you all have the ability to approve this or deny it.
To do whatever we want.
Exactly.
Okay.
And I did just to add to this, we did just get notice that June 1st through the 3rd will be the property tax special session.
All right,
for the
it's coming up. Commissioner Eastman, do you have?
Yeah, I mean, I hear you on making sure that we are spending, that we structurally make our revenues and our expenditures work, like that we're not relying on reserves for ongoing expenses. I just, there's the next series of cuts are going to be harder than the last series of cuts. They're going to be, some of the deep service cuts that we're going to be feeling a lot more, and just having the flexibility to figure out how we at least transition off of those, if that's the direction that we go in, or do something different. I mean, I do not want to use reserves as a crutch, and I understand using it for capital dollars, but I also that reserve fund, I think it's important for like our technology build out, because that is a critical core service. But sort of new amenities, things like that, I feel that makes more sense for wild spaces, public places, some other things that would go in there. So as you said, we have to move something forward, or we don't have to move something forward, but I would move that the Finance Committee defer recommendation of third budget amendment until after the certified property tax rolls are received, and request that staff return with an analysis of the amendment's FY27 general fund impacts, and along with a review of alternative funding scenarios for 8th and Waldo.
Motion.
And that includes referring the report to the city commission.
Yeah. So we're just deferring the report to the city commission, and just saying, what impact do these changes have on the FY27 budget?
Mr. Chair, just to clarify, you mean preliminary rolls, not certified, right? Because we get preliminary at the beginning of the month and we get certified.
Preliminary then, yeah.
Okay. I have a motion. Do I have a second for Commissioner Eastman's motion?
I'll second the motion. I would say I'm more comfortable actually recommending this. I think most of the FTEs are just kind of taking money out of one pocket and putting it in the other, and I see where they're kind of. It makes sense to me to do, especially at the end of a budget as we're moving forward, for actual scenarios that are going on currently in the city. But maybe it's not hell on the down if we're going to go with the recommendation to defer. I'm okay with that.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Commissioner Brooke, do you have anything else to add?
No, sir. Thank you.
Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That passes with 3 unanimous votes. Thank you, Ms. Pisley. And I am going to be stepping out and handing the gavel over to whichever chair we have, a vice chair of the committee. I forget who it is.
James, are you the vice chair?
Yes.
Am I the vice chair? James, the vice chair. Great.
I'm the vice chair.
Right.
Congratulations.
I believe legally, whoever is sitting closest to the gavel.
Let's see who catches it.
All right, finally. Hey, buddy. I don't know how to drive the light system, so just wave at me.
That's fine. Yeah.
We'll do this. Yeah. All right, moving on.
Hey, Mr. Vice Chair, we are on to 2026-362 fiscal year 2026 second quarter budget monitoring report with projections through September 30, 2026. The Finance Committee receives the fiscal year 2026 second quarter budget monitoring report.
Okay,
Thank you.
it's me again. Okay, so the purpose for this presentation is to provide an update for the status of the 2026 budget relative to the actual revenues and expenditures that we've incurred for the fiscal year based on preliminary numbers as of March 31st of 2026. Okay, so for the general fund, we did a detailed analysis comparing preliminary year-end actuals to budgeted revenues and expenditures in the general fund, and it's projected to end the fiscal year with a $223,000 deficit. First, I'll go over the revenues and get a little more detail into why we're projecting a deficit. So at the end of the second quarter, 68% of the budgeted revenues had been collected. Property tax revenues represented about 62.5% of the revenues received, and the general fund is projected to end the fiscal year with a lower than budgeted revenues of $167.6 million. The significant variances to the amendment budget are due to the GRU attorney expenses related to House Bill 1645, GRU has been withholding these expenses from the government services contribution. For fiscal year 2026, we assume that these expenses would not exceed $250,000, and as of March 31st, the expenses were $473.6, which is about $223.6 thousand more than we had originally projected. So for the general fund expenditures, as of March 31st, 2026, the general fund expenses were at about 48.6% of the amended budget, which is below the 50% mid-year threshold. The year-end projections indicate that the citywide expenditures will fall within the current budget allocations. And we will continue to monitor the expenditure levels, and we'll return to the commission with any adjustments to balance the budget at the end of the fiscal year as needed. All right, next we have the quarterly financial reports on the performance of the Ironwood Golf Course. Based on the unaudited financial data for fiscal year 2026 Q2, the Ironwood Golf Course operations experienced an operational deficit of $111,000, which is an improvement of about $54,000 compared to the 2025 Q2 year-to-date deficit, which was $166,000. The operating revenues totaled $519,000, and operating expenditures totaled $631,000. Based on the financial data as of March 31st, the current fiscal year end projection estimates a deficit of about $288,000 for the Ironwood Golf Course. Detailed tables are provided in the report with detailed projections of revenues by category and expenditures by department. The Office of Management and Budget will continue to monitor revenues and expense trends for the rest of the fiscal year, and we'll be providing another update at the end of the third quarter based on the next 3 months of financial data, which will drive our year-end projections. So if you have any questions, be happy to answer them. We also have staff here.
Let me check with the rest of the committee. Any questions? All right. Good. Yes, sir. All right. We said, if we're looking for we don't need any action on this at all.
No, it's just to accept the report.
All right.
Yeah, I'd like to move that the Finance Committee, I guess, receive the FY 2026 second quarter budget monitoring report.
Second. Great. All right, got a motion and a second. Any public comment on this?
Mr. Vice Chair, there's no public comments.
All right, seeing none, then all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Say pass.
Thank you.
Mr. Vice Chair, we are on to 2026-363, update on GRU city financial transactions as of March 31st, 2026. The Finance Committee receives a report from the Financial Services regarding the second quarter of the fiscal year 2026 balances with general government and GRU as of March 31st, 2026.
Good afternoon, Dennis Wen, Director of Financial Services, and I'm here to provide another quarterly update of GRU and GG transactions. Starting with the general services contributions, we've received $3.1 million out of the budgeted $7.2 million. This does include deductions of $640,000 for county streetlights and the legal fees of $473,000. If you'd like life-to-date numbers, I do have them in front of me, and those are 4.1 or almost 4.2 million in county streetlights life-to-date, and also 1.2 million in legal fees deducted life-to-date. But that's where we stand with the GSC. So we are projecting under budget since legal fees are higher than anticipated. Go ahead.
And so this is, that's 4.2 million that have been taken out for streetlights.
Yes, over the course of the last 3 years.
And then 1.2 million for what is alleged to be legal fees, but we don't have any invoices or anything to show that. This is just
Correct.
The alleged legal fees.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so
That's
in total-
over the
total we're
past
looking
3 years
at
as well.
5.4 million in total.
Yes.
All right, all right, thank you, Dennis.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Next, we have indirect
Hold on.
cost. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. So this is the one we've spoken about several times, especially the street lights and kind of this multifaceted agreement with the county and the city and GRU, and that's the one that's held us back. I would probably recommend here, Mr. Manager, we add this to the next city county manager, or the next city county meeting. We have about 4 agenda items, but this one we're gonna need to address, and we cannot address it without the county actually being a part of the conversation. It's impossible, so I don't know what you all think about that, but this is a critical one.
Good.
I don't disagree. I think we need to figure out what our approach is going to be, because we brought this up at a previous city-county joint meeting, correct? And the county's position was, this seems like an issue between you and GRU. We have a contract with the city, and what's happening is that we are the only city in the entire country in which a department of our city is not controlled by the city, but can take actions on behalf of the city. And so we're just in an odd position. I think we need to decide if there's any way to cut ourselves off from that contract potentially. But I think the city sort of needs to figure out what legal recourse we have there, because I don't think the county's position has really changed at this point, and they're gonna. I don't want them to dig their heels in more. I mean, there's a potential that we have a solution that will satisfy all parties. There's a potential that we have a solution that will not satisfy 1 or 2 parties. But we have to know what our solutions are, and I don't think we know that at the moment. And so I think they'll basically be in the same place they were last time. Is my concern. I don't want them. I don't want to bring something up that we don't have internally ready to go out the door. Is my only concern with it. That's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And I would add that, again, I think that's kind of out of the county's ability to change in some ways too, because even if they decided okay, great, we'll pay for our streetlights, that doesn't automatically mean that GRU will then restore that to the service transfer. They can set it at whatever they want. But I mean, I'm happy to talk to our colleagues about it, but I said it seems like the decisions are being made by the GRUA. Brian, on that. Please continue.
All right, so next we have the indirect cost. We've collected exactly half. We're expecting to receive $937,000 through the end of this fiscal year, and payments are occurring regularly for the indirect cost. Next is the utility taxes. We do get this on a monthly basis, and so far we've collected $7.8 million out of the budget at $16.4 million. I do believe our utility taxes do trend a little bit higher during the summertime, so maybe we can come in a little bit over budget. Stormwater and solid waste fees, collecting roughly half fiscal year to date, so no irregularities there. Pension obligation bonds, also paid on a monthly basis. We're on track to receive the full 9.5 million budgeted. Fleet management and fuel services of 1.9 million has been received out of the budgeted 3.9 million. So again, nothing out of the ordinary, and general insurance as well. So we are on track with all of our regular payments. Miscellaneous payments such as refuse, GBD services, unemployment totaled $60,000 through March 31st of 2026, and then totaling total transfers and charges for service received from GRU of approximately $32 million. I do also want to add payroll services has fully transitioned to GRU, so effective March 23rd, they are processing their own payroll. They are still providing benefit payments such as pension and health insurance payments, contributions to the general government, and that's occurring on a bi-weekly basis, so no delays in those contributions.
All right, very good. Does that conclude your report?
No, I have
I'm sorry.
one more. Now these are transfers and charges for service that we pay to GRU. First, we have the IT service level agreement. We've paid $1.9 million so far, expecting to pay the full $3.8 million that's in the SLA. For telephone services, we paid almost roughly half again. And stormwater and solid waste billing services, we've paid exactly half of what we budgeted. And this is per the MOU that was executed in 2023. So we're paying based off of that MOU. And then finally, other miscellaneous charges of $282,000 for a total of $2.7 million paid year to date to GRU. And this is only interfund transactions. On my next slide here, on my next slide here, I have non-interfund payments, which include utility expenses of $3.2 million and dark fiber connectivity payments of $68,000. So these are just regular operating costs the city incurs, and so we run these through our accounts payable and pay them as we receive those invoices. I do also want to note that we have right-of-way permit fees that have accrued up to $303,000, and this is still outstanding. I have not booked this through our interfund, but I do not expect GRU to pay them at this point. Back to the due to, due from balances. So as of March 31st, we owed GRU $1.2 million. This is primarily related to the IT SLA. We've since settled that. So as of March 31st, we are completely up to date, other than the right-of-way permit fees that are still outstanding. I think that's all I have for my presentation. Again, I've included a detail in the backup of every single transaction that occurs between general government and GRU. All the positive numbers that you see on there are payments that we've received from GRU, and all the negatives are the payments that we've sent to GRU. But that is all the transactions up year to date.
All right, very good. Any questions from the commission? All right, seeing none. All right, and do we not need a motion on this? So we were just receiving? Very good. All right.
And Mr. Vice Chair, we are on to member comments.
All right, any member comments? All right, the only member comment I have is you will both be here for my inaugural banging of a gavel.
This is your first time.
This is it. So seeing nothing else, what's our next meeting date is August 26th of 2026. I will officially declare this meeting adjourned.